back. I'm Mike Quincy.
I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
And I'm Mike Monticello.
So we have a very special podcast today, which I say all the time because they're all special. But today we are actually going to be talking about a vehicle that is somewhat unusual, and that is the Volkswagen Jetta GLI. And on the surface, you think, well, it's just a Jetta. No, actually, this is a manual transmission Jetta, the last of its kind. It is going away after the 2026 model year. And thanks to Dave Abrams, who allows us to dive deep in this kind of a discussion about a kind of an obscure car, as we did with the Mazda Miata, the manual transmission Miata. We had a whole podcast on that. Look it up on YouTube. It was super fun. And he's like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if you took this Jetta GLI and talked about it like the Miata? So that's what we're doing today.
You know what? That is a spot-on Dave Abrams impersonation. Spot on. Seriously.
I'm afraid to look over it.
And you know, listen, the GLI has always been in the shadow of the GTI. You'd have to admit that, right?
Yeah.
But still, credit Volkswagen at least for attempting to put out a sports sedan. It really is a dying breed. And we borrowed a 2026 GLI Autobahn from Volkswagen with a 6-speed manual transmission. It was equipped with a very handsome monument gray paint and the black package, which includes black 18-inch wheels and black side mirror caps. And it's stickered at $36,125. And
which is pretty good, actually.
Yeah,
it is a lot of car for the money. And according to my notes, I just see freeform discussion, hilarity ensues. So let's just kind of jump into it. Let's talk about this GLI, and I'm just going to toss it out there. Who wants to start?
Well, where do we start with the fact that like this is one of a few manuals left that you can buy? I mean, that's sad
in any shape or form.
Yeah, I mean, that Miata was manual. That's a little different. This is an actual sedan, right? This has a little more utility to it than a Miata.
For sure.
It's a great manual. I thought it's shifted quite well.
Yeah, I think
it's easy to drive. You could teach someone how to drive a manual on this manual, I think.
It's exactly what I put in the logbook notes. And I just want to make it clear, the manual is going away. The GLI is not going away.
Correct.
So there's still going to be the 7-speed DSG, which is direct shift gearbox, which is basically what they call their dual clutch transmission. But I mean, I think the powertrain is fantastic in this thing. I mean, it's basically, a GTI with in a sedan form.
And to be noted, the GTI is not available with a manual anymore.
Right, which is so bizarre.
So let's keep that in mind.
Backwards to me.
It's the like you said, Ryan, it's so easy to use. The clutch is nice and light. The take up is very natural, like it's intuitive to find out, when it's, engaging. And the gearbox is nice and light. It's precise. If there's one criticism, it's the throws are maybe a little long, but honestly, if you miss a gear with this thing, it's you. It's not the gearbox. It's just so light and easy to use. And because the clutch is so easy to use, you can basically let out the clutch without even giving it hardly any gas whatsoever, which is why it would be so great to teach someone who's never driven a manual. This would be a great car for that.
It's forgiving in the sense that throw is long. So like as you're letting out the clutch and RPM start to go down, like there's still time to like just touch the throttle and not panic.
It's not this tiny little point.
It gives you a lot of information about what where the clutch is at in terms of engagement, so that you don't stall it, which makes it easy for someone to learn how to drive it.
Right. So let's dive into the easy to learn how to drive thing. So one of the biggest fears about learning on a manual is having to start when you're kind of facing uphill. So you've got your foot on the brake, you've got your foot in the clutch, and the light turns green, and you've got to let off the brake and then ease off the clutch and roll on the throttle. Yeah. Now, what the GLI has in the manual transmission is a hill holder. Yeah. And can you guys just describe to the audience what does a hill holder do?
Well, it does exactly what you said. It holds you on the hill, allow you take your foot off the brake. It'll hold you there for a small amount of time. It will let go eventually, but that allows you to just get the clutch almost engaged and a little bit of throttle going, and then as you apply that transition, it'll just take off from there without rolling backwards at all. However, I find that sometimes that doesn't help you. You need to learn with that rollback, I think. That really gives you that feel of like where you're supposed to be engaging and how much, right? You need more because now you're rolling backward down a hill a little bit. And you're not rolling a lot, but your momentum starts to go the opposite way, right? So it just holds you there for a moment while you can make that transition. A lot of times you can turn that off, which
It's also,
I didn't learn that way.
It's also, yeah, actually, I want to talk about the way you learned in a second, because that's how we all learn.
Well,
but just, it can be a little odd. It's helpful, but it can also be odd when you're trying to get it to release, because it releases kind of abruptly.
Some cars don't do it well, and as you go forward, you want it to be gone, and it's not quite gone.
This one does it a little bit. I didn't find it. I know some people here didn't like it. I didn't find it a big deal, but it can be a little bit annoying. But I think what you were alluding to is back in the day, because we're all a little older, you would use your emergency brake to do that. So you'd put your emergency brake on, and then as you're about to get going, you start giving it some gas, and you start letting the clutch out, and then then you kind of do everything at once and let the emergency brake.
But you wouldn't always do that.
No, I'm saying if you're on a really steep hill,
right?
You might.
I knew some people that learned how to drive with the manual just like that.
But so that's what I'm saying. To learn, yeah. But eventually, I mean, you once you get good at driving a manual, we used to drive them all the time. We don't do that anymore. So there's a little bit of rust every time we go out there, right? But yeah, to learn, I guess back then was. Or we just smoked the clutch. You know what I mean? Then you learn through fixing the clutch.
So funny side story with the manual in hills. When I first started dating my wife, we flew out to San Francisco and we rented a Miata, and you could rent a Miata back in the 90s with a manual. And I was like, we're going to drive the Miata in the hills of San Francisco with this manual transmission. And we both took turns with it, and we both had fun and didn't stall it once.
That's awesome.
So learning how to drive a manual.
Those are steep hills too.
I wasn't learning how to drive a manual at that point, but yeah, driving a manual in San Francisco, I think that's really the badge of honor that people should be aspiring to. But you're right, Mike. Some people that drove the car here at Consumer Reports Test Track did have some issues with the hill holder with the GLI, like it held onto it too long.
A little bit, yeah.
And I didn't think it was a big deal.
Yeah, and for
it
all
goes away pretty quick.
And for all the miles that I drove it. It never. I didn't even know it was there. I wouldn't, because it never engaged when I was driving the car.
Right. Yeah. It takes a certain amount of a hill, certain steepness of a hill for it to actually engage.
But so there are some members of the Talking Cars audience that maybe they were interested in experiencing a manual transmission, and so this is now kind of fodder for them going forward with it. But because this GLI, it did kind of elicit a lot of discussion among us. I know that I spent about a long weekend driving this car, put over 600 miles of it driving through the hills of Vermont, and I really found that the handling in particular was really spot on for a front wheel drive car. The steering was not quite telepathic, but there was good weight to it. There was a lot of grip. There was really good communication. I found it very satisfying from a handling perspective. Agree with you on the power. This 2-liter turbo has
great power,
a big punch to it. So much so that I was on one of those backcountry Vermont roads, and I went out to pass somebody in a passing zone. I downshifted and I nailed it, and I felt some torque steer.
Yeah, there's a little torque steer. I got some of that.
Like
not bad.
Like a lot of times people talk about torque steer like from a standing start where the wheels are spinning and the front end is going all over the place. So I'm rolling down a back road in Vermont, and I pass somebody, and I just felt the car kind of move a little bit side to side. And I was like, oh, I'll just pay attention here. It wasn't quite a pucker up moment, but it wasn't exactly fun either.
Well, that's why we call it wrong wheel drive.
Right.
Precisely. That was my next statement.
So it is front wheel drive. You are going to get a little bit of torque steer. I really didn't think it was that bad, considering it has 258 pound-feet of torque. I didn't think it was that bad. It's pretty good at managing it, all things considered. But I do agree that the handling is really good, and so it comes standard with adaptive suspension, right? Which means you can change the mode, you can go from the normal mode that it's in, to a sport mode, which firms everything up, and it makes the handling even sharper because now there's going to be less body roll, and I mean you can really flog it on a back road and go really hard with it and feel very much in control, even though it's front wheel drive, and just have like a lot of fun with it. And its limits are quite high. It's honestly impressive.
It had a lot of grip for sure. I'll be honest, I was a little underwhelmed because I think I got into it expecting, we don't get cars, we don't really have cars like that often anymore that are, manual, that are supposed to be like the sporty thing, right? To me, it was good, very good, but the manual made it fun for me. The handling was good, but it was also like we have a Civic, that hybrid sport. That handles really well, like really well. It doesn't have that powertrain though. So that's, for me, that was like the disconnect. Right. The other thing that I didn't necessarily love, and I haven't sat in a Jetta in a while, was the seating position. I felt very like upright. which doesn't feel sporty to me. And that I don't know, it's just the way I was sitting in the car. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it's fantastic.
You know what's funny is I worried sometimes when we get a manual in, because it is so rare that we have a manual, that I'm like, maybe my judgment is clouded.
That's what I'm
because
saying.
I love driving manuals so much that maybe I'm loving this thing. But I do think this is a really, really good car. I totally understand what you're saying about that maybe the handling wasn't quite spot on for you. But I also want to say another thing, sort of with still kind of keeping on the powertrain front. First of all, the engine's really good, like we talked about.
Great.
It has good power.
Good, yeah.
It's tractable, which means, if you hit the gas at say 2,500 RPM, it has good power from there on up. And again, the transmission, the gearbox is so fun to row through the gears, nice and precise, and it's like slick, and you can nick through the gears, as we say, without a problem. But also part of driving a manual for some people is heel and toe downshifting, right? And so it's important that the pedals are spaced correctly so that you can have part of your right foot on the brake and be able to blip the throttle, to match revs to make the downshift smoother. And I thought the pedals were spaced really nicely here for that. And I don't want to pick on your Miata, because I know you had a whole Love Fest podcast with the Miata. But remember, we borrowed that Miata. That was actually one of the things that really was a bummer about that, is you have to stab that gas pedal so hard in that Miata to get the throttle to blip.
Because of the angles, right. Or the depth of the pedals.
And there's just something about the tuning of it. You have to basically floor it almost, which is really hard to do when you're using half your foot. This one blips super nicely. And so I just was kind of impressed with how good that is. That said, the brakes, kind of typical for Volkswagen and Audi, they're a little touchy. So if you're kind of I like to heel and toe all the time. Anytime I'm downshifting, I'm going to heel and toe and rev match. And so, but if you're just mildly on the brakes, you have to be just a little more careful, because you can end up kind of stabbing the brakes a little too hard.
Yeah, because what I'm talking about? Yeah, they're sensitive up top.
But in general, really good.
But according to the car's logbook, not everybody was happy with the foot space for the pedals.
Well, they're wrong.
They're wrong. And also, let's also keep a little bit of perspective here. I know how to heel toe. I almost never do it anymore.
Why?
Because let's
get into that. Let's talk to your therapist about that.
It just seems like not childish, but it's like going through this racy motion every time you drive a manual. Like I
can't say I do that on the street all the time. But
it's fun.
But I will say,
it's fun.
It's fun, but it's sort of unnecessary.
No, it's not. You're making a smoother downshift and a quicker downshift.
You're not doing lap times on a road,
right? But isn't one of your main goals as being a professional driver to be as smooth and precise as you possibly can at all times?
Right, but I'm not always under the spotlight. I don't really think about it that much. Sometimes I just kind of downshift casually approaching a corner, and I don't think about rev matching.
I will allow it.
With these rare occasions, I'm going to interrupt, okay? With these rare occasions that we have manuals now it's like, all right, we're going to do this because, like, when's the next time we're going to drive a manual? Sadly, we don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know, right?
True.
So you're going to take full advantage of it.
Well, yeah. Use that beautiful mechanical device that we don't get to play with
He's not
anymore.
Just heel and toe downshifting, he's double clutching.
Yeah. I actually don't heel and toe. My foot's wide enough. I just use half of my foot. 'Cause I have big feet.
So it's called heel and toe, but I mean, honestly, that's kind of an old school term when the pedals really weren't spaced very well. Right. And these days, it's really more half the ball of your foot is on the brake, half the ball of your foot is blipping the gas. So it's called heel and toeing, but really it's... Well, I'm going to come up with a new term.
I was going to say, you tell the Talking Cars audience, Google it, and you'll get a better explanation that we're giving to. It is a quick way to go around a racing circuit, I suppose. It's
actually mesmerizing.
In a normal, day-to-day driving, to me, I think it's kind of
if you watch
silly,
some of
but
it's not. You are making you're making for a smoother and quicker downshift. So that you don't, because otherwise, if you don't blip the throttle, Quince, then you have to kind of gently let the clutch out. Here, you don't have to gently let the clutch out at all, and it's going to be smoother. Am I right?
I'm not saying you're wrong, but is it necessary? It's not necessary at all.
It's not a law. It's a law of manuals. It's a law of driving a manual. It's not a law in Connecticut.
Does it have the auto?
I don't think so.
It's the Monticello method of driving on the street. But along the lines of the engine, I was seeing like 36 to 38 miles per gallon in all of my driving, which is really terrific considering the performance.
Because you can drive it very gently. I mean, you're in control of shifting it. Literally, so
awesome.
I mean, it has an excellent cruising range. It does not require premium fuel. So again, there's so many positives about this car. Let's touch on the ride. So it is kind of a sports sedan.
Yep.
What did you think of the ride?
It's firm. I mean, and it should be. Minimal body roll, body control is pretty good, but it's firm on impacts. It's got low profile 18-inch wheels and tires. It's going to be firm. And if you are expecting something else, I don't know what to tell you.
But I'll say, but again, with
terrible.
the standard adaptive suspension, you have the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah,
because yes, even in normal mode, it's still firm. No question about that, Ryan. You're 100% right. There's going to be times where some hard hits are going to come through, right? It's just the way it is. But I think most of the time when you're, like I wouldn't drive it in sport mode the majority of the time, even though it does make for a slightly different engine note. And again, which I think is piped in anyway, probably slightly fake, but and it firms up the suspension. My normal
steering too a little bit, right?
What's that?
I thought it weightened up the steering a little bit.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think it affected a number of things. Yeah.
In normal driving, I would drive it in normal mode. If I knew I was about to hit a good road, then I'm going to switch it over to sport, because sport mode is definitely too firm for me for regular driving. It really does firm it up quite a bit. But normal mode is quite good. It's got that German tautness that we always talk about, right? So I mean, 100% livable. Is it on the firm side? 100%, absolutely.
But I did exactly that in my time with this GLI. I was flipping between modes all the time. Sometimes I'd go in sport. Sometimes I just went into comfort. Sometimes I went into normal. I like having the option because sometimes you're in the mood to just kind of chill, and other times you're in the mood.
And it's easy to do with that button on the console.
They also made enough of a difference. It wasn't gimmicky.
Exactly.
So sometimes they're like gimmicky. I don't even bother. Right. Exactly. These made enough of a change to warrant changing it.
Right. And you brought up noise. I on the side of, I kind of wished it was a little sportier. I kind of wish that there was a little
sound.
I wish there was a little bit more exhaust bark. But if you're using this as a normal car, you're going on road trips or whatever. It's not. I wouldn't call it a quiet car. But in my assessment of the GLI, I'm putting it in context of the Acura Integra and the Honda Civic Si, which are sort of sporty sedans. You can get manual transmissions.
Yes.
So look, I'm looking at those three all at the same time, and in my assessment, I think that the GLI is quieter than the Honda or the Acura.
And I think that's been typical. I mean,
and I think you're right though, Quincy. Like I would have liked, if you're going to give it a sport mode and you're going to make it have a slightly different note, why not be a little more aggressive?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
They could have gone a little more fun with it.
I mean, Ryan, I think you can relate to this. Years ago, we borrowed a Volkswagen R32, and that was a V6, the narrow angle V6.
That thing used to bark.
And that sucker barked.
Yeah,
that one snap, crackle, popped. It was all over
it had
the
a
place.
raspy, like angry note to it at times. First, regular street legal road going car from the factory, it made enough noise.
Not a modified exhaust at all. But good. I thought that was magical.
Yeah,
and I know it's probably asking too much for the Jetta GLI to do that, but certainly Volkswagen knows how to spice it up a bit.
Those were the good old days.
And you mentioned the seat and the driving position. Let's talk about the seat, because not everybody that drove this car loved it.
Well, I mean, listen, that's no matter what car you drive, we test here. Seat comfort is we're all different shape.
Yeah, highly personal.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's very right. It depends on your body type and all that stuff. So. I thought they fit me all right. The decent bolstering, keep you in place, which you want. Not like I remember the GLI, like going back several generations of it. Like they had these big Recaro with the bolsters, like almost annoying.
Painful.
Like they were like, and like I was probably a little leaner then, and they still dug into me, and like, so if you're, you have a more broad torso or wider legs, like those cars were tough. This fits a little better for, a wider audience, if you will.
Totally agree.
Yeah. For me, the seat was more the position than the actual seat. I didn't care for. So
a lot of people talked about the front end, front of the cushion tilting
you can't
up,
adjust it,
and you couldn't bring it down enough. I actually like that.
You can only tilt the back up and down. So you can't. Usually, we like in a car that's about this price. Usually, you can tilt the leading edge of the bottom cushion up and down. You can't.
Right.
In this case, for me, again, personally, it didn't bother me because the seat actually has a pretty good rearward rake. to the bottom cushion, and it does have good lateral support. Anyway, the seat worked well for me. I thought it was a nice combination between comfort as is kind of a little bit on the soft side and decent bolsters. Not amazing bolsters, but decent bolsters. But that it was a little weird that you can only do the rear of the seat up and down.
Yeah, and that limits people. I mean, like if I want to get rid of some of that, I have to go up. But if I go up in the back, guess what? I'm tall. My head not on the ceiling, and there's plenty of headroom in this car. German cars typically do have enough headroom, but it just limits to, if they could just adjust the front edge, it probably saved half of the people that were complaining about it.
Yeah,
right?
That was one of the main complaints about the driving position of this is the lack of adjustability for the seat. It fit me perfectly. I like the seat a lot. All day comfort.
Yeah.
Something Honda and Acura could learn something from it.
Right.
If you're out there listening, Honda and Acura, work on those seats, please. Touch on the controls. Generally, I found it pretty easy to use. There was a lot of complaints about the climate system.
Yeah.
You guys want to dive into that?
Honestly, a car like this, I only had it for a night. I get in it and I want to focus on driving it.
He put all the windows down. He's like, what climate system?
I'm serious. It was like, I put some music on, roll the windows down, and because Volkswagen for a while the controls were horrific, right? I mean, the last GTI we had to play around with, this generation better, but it was a nice night. I rolled the windows down. I wanted to drive. I wanted to drive a manual because when's the next time we're going to drive a manual?
Did you open the sunroof too?
But I know what you're talking about, Quincy. You're talking about capacitive touch climate controls,
right?
And I know there were some complaints, but the reality is I didn't mind them so much because they're in their own panel, right? You don't have to go to the screen. They're in their own panel. The fan speed has a slider, but you don't have to use the slider. So you can press on either end to go. I usually could just go up by
you can tap it.
You can tap it. And so also the temperature controls were easy to just tap as well. So in the end, certainly far, far, far from a deal breaker for me as far as these capacitive touch controls.
It's all, when you talk about capacitive buttons, certainly for climate system, I go back to the worst of the worst, and that's Mercedes-Benz. Anything that's better than the Mercedes system is good for me. I'm with you, Monty. I wasn't bothered by these climate controls at all, and all the seat heater buttons and the seat. So talk about content and climate stuff. The GLI comes with heated seats, vented seats, a heated steering wheel. Again, a lot of value for the money here.
And that's just content, and then don't forget about all the performance you're getting. The way that the powertrain works and how good the handling is, and yet it's still decent ride and blah blah blah.
And let's do a slight U-turn here, talking about performance. I am grateful that there is a vehicle out there that offers a manual transmission, 3 pedals. I thought this manual was terrible. I thought the throws were way too long. I thought the shift action was weak, sloppy, vague. I grew frustrated with this the more I drove it, probably because of the experience that I've had with the Miata, with the Civic Si, with the Integra, whose shifters I really, really like. And I'm thinking back to the last GTI that we tested with that also had a manual. I also thought that was sloppy.
Do you know what we said about that car?
We loved it. Okay, we did.
Do you want me to read the quote?
Yeah, and I've got one for you too, but go ahead.
Okay, we said about the last GTI manual that we drove, which is basically the same as what this is. The 6-speed manual transmission is nearly perfect with such a light and precise feel that sometimes you find yourself shifting gears just for the heck of it.
Yeah, and you might wind up in the wrong gear.
No.
I understand the sentiment of it. I just disagree with it. I'm putting it in comparison with other manual transmissions that we've driven in the maybe last 5 years or something like that. Yeah. This one is awful. We've driven the DSG version of the GLI a couple years ago. I vastly prefer that over the manual. And I know
sacrilege.
All the hate. I know it's crazy. All the people are going to come out of the woodworks and say that
better hide for a while.
That I'm a lunatic. But I didn't find it crisp. I even prefer the notchiness of that last WRX shifter over this one. I want a little bit more beefy feedback from a manual, and the GLI just doesn't have it. Yeah. And again, this is like a personal thing.
For sure.
And some people love it, and some people don't. For me, it felt absolutely dead. And so I pulled out a quote from the last GTI test too, and we said, let me see if I can find it. So we
Are we just going to go back and forth on quotes?
I'm just going to go.
So this is what we said about the last GTI. The optional 7-speed dual clutch automatic barely dilutes the driving thrills. That's what we said. This is so funny because the audience should know.
That's okay.
I didn't know Monty was going to pull out a quote from the last GTI, and you knew that I wasn't going to
guys
do
came
it.
with
Barely
ammo,
dilutes means it did dilute some. But here's what I will say, Quince. First of all, it's very personal. I guess. But I understand what you're talking about as far as a more robust manual. Like my favorite manual I've ever driven, and I wouldn't be surprised if this German car lover over here agrees with me, is a Porsche 911 GT3.
Sure.
That gearbox is so wonderfully, like you have to use a heavy hand with that thing. No. But it is so incredibly precise and so amazing every time it goes through the gears. Original Acura NSX was unbelievable. Honda S2000, right? But the gearbox doesn't have to be crazy robust like that to still be a good gearbox. And I think being so light and easy to use like this one is better for more people, is my personal guess. You know what I mean? And it's just so easy to use. Now it's one thing if the throws are really long, which these are just slightly long, but if it's not precise, meaning you go to the next gear and it's like, wait, where is it? Then that's a bad gearbox. That isn't the case here. You should not be missing any gears with this gearbox because the throws are very precise.
I didn't have that issue missing. I will say this, and this is just a build quality issue. Did you notice how loose the actual knob is?
Yeah,
I did.
But that's not the transmission itself.
But the knob itself was rotated in your hands.
Yeah.
But also when it was in gear, you could also the whole shifter would kind of move back and forth too. It just
a little play.
It just didn't feel connected to anything. And again, it's kind of sacrilege, but not every manual option is good. I was at a press event years ago. Remember the Chevrolet SS?
Yeah.
Okay, rear-wheel drive, Corvette engine, originally came out with an automatic. They also brought out a manual. Same thing with me. That shifter was terrible.
That was pretty bad.
was awful. And so the manual option isn't always the best way to go here.
Yeah, you can have bad manuals. I think Ryan and I disagree with you that this is a bad one.
I don't think it's a bad one.
Well, it's clear. It's clear that I'm not neutral on this transmission. Whoa! Look at that one. Yeah, I did write that one down.
Insert joke here.
Yeah, no, not really. Not that specific. But
can I talk about a couple other good things?
I had more negatives to go, but go ahead. Go with the good.
Well, I just want to say that the rear seat is huge.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten how big the rear seat in the Jetta is.
And the trunk, too.
And
for a small car?
Too. I just wrote down trunk. It's huge.
100%.
But it's not. It's huge. But to be fair, it's not really a small car anymore, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, the Jetta going back to the beginning was a tiny little car. This is not a small car. So,
True.
But it is. Considering still for size today, the backseat is good size for sure.
It's adult friendly, and that's important. And the trunk is important too. That's it, Quince.
Especially in a time when like sedans are kind of like. I'm surprised they're even making it still. Right?
I know.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I'm glad they are though.
Me too.
I'm so happy.
One other thing I want to touch on with the driving position is that hard plastic panel in the center console.
You know that's my pet peeve.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I was so annoyed by that over and over. And my leg is like,
more or less than with the manual.
It didn't matter.
To go back to it,
I'm kidding.
My right leg stays at the same spot.
No, it was annoying for me too.
But it made me think, is like, gosh, if I drove this car every day, would I get a little towel and like put it on the side of the center console, so my knee rubs against something soft?
So personal tidbit, you guys know I wear shorts a lot, right? Almost every day to the office, like 90% of the days throughout the year. Besides that being hard plastic that your knee is rubbing on, and it really does hem you in, there's some fake plastic stitching that when you wear shorts,
I hate that.
It was rubbing, my knee was rubbing right on the fake plastic.
Yeah.
Like
against
one
the
thing if it
bone.
was just plastic,
Yeah,
but then it's
exactly.
right on this weird stitching, which just makes it worse.
Yeah. It was a bad detail. We praised it for having lots of good content, but we're gonna like knock it down a little bit with all the hard plastics. They cut some corners with the interior. There's no rubber liners for the cup holders. I mean, that's like. Today, almost every car we test has some rubber liners for the couples. It's a small detail, but if you got something rattling around
that's
in there,
the worst.
it'll add up.
To me, it's not even that small of a detail. When something's rattling in the car, that drives me insane. Especially like if you have that little compartment up where you put like sunglasses or something, and it's not rubber, and you have some change in there, and it rattles back and forth. Especially in a car that handles well,
right?
And you're
going to be taking
you're going to be
corners
shaking it around a little bit. It's so annoying.
And one of the trademark Volkswagen details that I've always loved is they often come with an adjustable center armrest. armrest.
Yeah.
So
They always did,
you've got this bin in between the seats, and you can raise the armrest as to where you want it to make it comfortable, and it kind of ratchets down and it stays in that position. This GLI does not have that, which was kind of a bummer. Like, oh man, you took that out.
And it was a bummer for me because the way the armrests aren't perfectly
Mr. Symmetrical over here.
Yeah, Mr. Symmetrical. I guess that's my new nickname. I wanted a nickname, and that's it. Mr. Symmetrical.
You can't even
want credit for
Worst
that.
nickname ever. And so you're a little bit like off kilter.
Yeah.
And it doesn't adjust. Like I feel like my right elbow is about, again, because I sit closer than you. I feel like my right elbow is about to fall off at times. Did you have that as well, Quincy?
Yes.
Because I know you sit pretty close as well. So,
Yep.
yeah.
No, that was kind of a bummer. I was disappointed to see that. But when it comes down to it, though, if you had to blaspheme, leave auto test and buy yourself a car, would you buy this?
No, but it's funny you say that because for the longest time, back when there was the GTI was fun and it had a manual, that was always an option to me because it was somewhat affordable. Front wheel drive, not the best, but you could slap some winter tires on it, go anywhere you need to go in the winter. But the hatch, it was functional.
But explain your no. Why wouldn't you buy this?
I need more utility than that. I mean, the back seat, I would rather have a hatchback or an SUV at that point, right? Because if I'm only gonna have one car, this wouldn't be enough for me, right? I'd probably have a truck for Christ's sake. But
okay, even the body type doesn't fit your lifestyle.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if it was a wagon or a hatchback, maybe. And I didn't love it that much. I like the car. I think it's great. It's a manual. We had a lot of fun with it, but it just didn't light my world on fire completely.
Yeah.
What
Monty,
about you?
would you buy it?
I liked it a lot. Let's put it that way. I really liked it, and I would consider it. I'm not a huge fan of front-wheel drive performance cars.
Me either.
So that's kind of my biggest sticking point. Really, is this? I don't love front-wheel drive. Like when you're really trying to put the power down, especially in any kind of rainy conditions. You get that axle hop, and it's just a little frustrating to deal with. I love a good rear-wheel drive car.
We do live in the Northeast, so again, consider that you have one car to drive every day
It can be done.
in all seasons.
I did it for years.
Probably not for me. I'd put snow tires on first of all.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to. Yeah.
But I think for someone else, possibly, I think actually, heck yeah, is what I wrote in my notes. Because if you like driving for the sake of driving, and especially if you want to drive a manual, and especially if you want to learn how to drive a manual, this is a fantastic car. I think that not only is it easy to learn how to drive a manual, but it's easy to drive. It has very high limits. You're not going to get tired of this car quickly. There's a lot of content for the money, and get it now because it's going away. You know?
Right.
So, I mean, we wrote down, it said in the keyboard, as soon as I saw it says something like last of the VW manuals. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So this is both a sad day and a happy day. It's a sad day because they're going away, but it's a happy day because this is a really good car.
Right.
And if you are considering it, just buy it.
Yeah. Start a card writing campaign to Volkswagen to keep manual transmissions going. I have to say, for me, if they could put the Honda transmission in the GLI, I'd buy it. I'd buy the manual.
Yeah.
As it stands now, if I were going to get a GLI, I'd get the DSG. I'd get the DSG and take all the hate from all the haters. I don't care. But because just to me, this driving this one for as long as I did, it just got a little bit tedious. And if you want to find out where I drove, I drove it 600 miles. I went up to Vermont, up Route 100 and Route 17. Just punch in Mad River Glen in your GPS and check out those Vermont roads. They're fantastic.
It's a good place to drive.
And the GLI is a great car for those roads. But listen, check out what we have to say on all Volkswagens, the Jetta in particular, at consumerreports.org. We've got all this information on all of our experiences with the Jetta. And again, weigh in on the comments. Would you go for kind of a so-so manual or an okay DSG if you're going to buy this? Let us know what you think. I have an idea that our audience is going to say, manual only, you wuss. Come on, get over it. But whatever. Anyway, so that's what we got on the GLI, which brings us to our audience questions. We love your questions. Text 30-second videos. Go to talkingcars@icloud.com. That's talkingcars@icloud.com. And if we use your question in the podcast, we'll send you a t-shirt or some other groovy auto test swag. And luckily for our awesome audience, we have two questions for this episode. And we're going to start out with a question from Will, who writes, Two things. Where did Mike Quincy get his glasses? They are cool and retro and I want to copy him. Can you believe this? Can you believe Abrams allowed this question through with a compliment to me?
I want to be like you.
And look
My
at that.
goal is to be like you, Quince.
Anyway, that's the first part of his question. Will also writes, I know you guys had a meetup in New York City before the New York Auto Show earlier this year, and you mentioned that you hope to do more such meetups in the future. I love this idea, but I think you should do a meetup event that's maybe more centrally located, like Chicago, and also make it a fundraiser for CR. My rationale, I can get Consumer Reports free via the library of the university I work at, so there's not a specific reason for me to subscribe. Will, I'd like you to rethink that. But I also love the YouTube content, and I want to support it. And if you held a meetup that was also a fundraiser, I would gladly attend and donate to Consumer Reports. Will, thanks so much for the love, especially the glasses. The glasses, the company that makes my glasses is called Lunar, so go to lunar.com.
Looney?
Lunar.
Lunar. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Lunor. I can spell Lunor.
Pardon? You getting paid for this?
No, I wish.
Just getting free glasses.
I see what's going on
I
here.
just happened to see these frames in a glasses place somewhere in Hartford. I'm not going to say where. And they just appealed to me. They do kind of have a classic design, and I like them a lot. And I'm glad you two do too. In relation to the meetups, we love hanging out with the Talking
That was fun.
Cars crew. Ryan, you were there with me in New York City with Abrams and all the video crew and a bunch of other people. We love hearing your stories, why you buy the cars that you buy. We often got long histories from viewers saying, oh, I read your stuff and I bought this one, and then I needed another car and I was about to have another baby, so I needed more room, so I bought this one. And the people that love cars love to talk about them. And that is really, it's a miracle that we actually get paid to do that here.
Yeah, that was a good.
We're gonna keep doing these meetups. Stay tuned for more information, more announcements in the future. We really hope to do more of them if when time allows. You never know. We're going to show up in a city near you. Which brings us to our second question, and this is Andy from Elk Grove, California. He writes, our oldest son is of driving age, and within the next year or so, we'll be looking to add a used car to our household for him to drive. We'll be looking to spend no more than $20,000, and this is non-negotiable. Boy, that sounds like a dad. The car must have a manual transmission. I'm sold on their advantages for teen drivers, one of them being that it's very difficult to use a phone while driving a stick. Your video of best cars for teens under $20,000 was helpful, but not all the vehicles mentioned are available with a stick shift. I do like the Mazda 3. Any others that you would recommend? Mr. Monticello, let's start with you. Andy's a pretty cool dad.
Yeah.
Come on.
I love that manual is mandatory.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that's a new saying. It can go with my new nickname,
It
Mr.
is now.
Symmetrical. The manual is mandatory. I think that's really awesome. I think you can't go wrong with a manual Mazda 3. So I think, first of all, if that's where he's leaning of going, you can't go wrong there. I just want to say, though, that I understand where he's going as far as the manual sort of. I think it definitely makes a driver more engaged because you have to be, but you still have to be a good driver. And the reality is you still need to teach your teen really well, because I've seen very bad drivers. I've seen very bad drivers driving manual transmissions who are actually bad at driving manual transmissions, yet still highly distracted. So the point is, a teen's going to figure out if they want to use their phone, they're going to use their phone. But I do agree that this probably lessens it somewhat. But it's no substitute for still teaching them how important it is to not use that phone. Because just throwing them a manual and say, go for it, you're going to be fine. You still got to make sure that's really, really important. But I agree that it makes you more engaged in the whole process. But you still got to stay off that phone.
Yeah, I'm going to say my sons are in their 20s now, so I did teach them to drive. And I will say confidently that my boys never saw my wife or me fiddle with our phones while we were driving. So it starts from the top.
You're right.
If the parents are messing with their phones while they're driving, their kids see this, the kids are more going to well, that's okay, right?
So, that's absolutely true. But that was a different time. I grew up, my parents didn't have a cell phone. Like they eventually did, but like when I started driving, I think we had like the Nokia brick thing. Like it would ring once in a while. They didn't use cell phones like that. So when I got my license, it was like, well, but I was so into driving that I didn't care, and it wasn't like the phones today. I mean, you pick it up and it's this like this iPad, like it does all these things. They didn't do that much back then. It rang,
and you could make the argument that controls in cars today are super distracting.
Yeah.
It's even taking the phone argument, and I get that, and that is one of the crusades that Consumer Reports has been on for a while to pressure manufacturers to making cars with easier controls, with less distraction and whatnot. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that no one should be messing with their phones while they're driving.
Right.
Whatever text it is, whatever call it is, whatever, it can probably wait. Or, I know this sounds old-fashioned, but pull over in a safe place on the side of the road, put your car in park, and do whatever you need to do on your phone. Right. Now, luckily, with modern systems like Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, when you've got your phone hooked up to that, you can see a call coming in. You hit the screen and say accept a call or whatever. Somebody can text you, and it'll read you the text, and it'll say, "Do you want to reply?" And all you do is talk. And so you want to send it. You say, "Yes, send it." Good, better, done.
See, I think of that though. Still, that's so much more than we had in those, like my 86 325e manual. I mean, there was nothing to play with. The radio barely worked. There was nothing there. But now these cars are, the screen talking to you and stuff like that's distracting.
Right.
Even that,
Yeah. But let's also
I feel like you had a question for me.
Yeah.
Or you wanted me to answer the question.
I don't want to lose sight of actually what Andy's talking about here, and that's what's the best car for a manual for his son. So what besides the Mazda 3, which we all agree with.
Yeah, and
awesome.
I was going to say, I think you can't go wrong with that. But I would say another option, since he's looking for other options, I would say something like a Honda Civic, which has had a very good manual for a while now. And if the kid is an enthusiast, maybe a Honda Civic Si. If you're looking something like the 2015, that was back when it still had the high revving, naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, or they didn't have a 2016, I think. So they had 2017. That's when they had the 1.5 liter turbo 4. I think either one of those would be really good options. You could also go with something like a Golf. Again, if you like the manual, maybe not so much, but it could be a little more expensive to maintain.
Well, I was going to mention the Golf, because I always liked that. That was always a good. And that the manual's not the best, but I think it's pretty darn good. But then again, I guess it's a little more. The Mazda is going to be super reliable, right? The Volkswagen. It's going to be terrible, but when you have to fix it, it's going to cost more money. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and just for clarification, the manuals were available on 2025 and earlier Honda Civics.
Right.
So
that's a good one too.
Yeah, the Civic also lost its manual.
Yeah, well, they're looking for used.
Right. But I'm just but every new car eventually becomes a used car. So yes, can't go wrong with the Mazda 3. Check out the Civic manuals. Also, I will say that there's one that neither of you guys brought up, which I'm glad, which is a WRX. Don't get your new early driver.
That sounds good.
A WRX.
That sounds really
Number
good.
one, yes, you can get it with the manual, but they're way too. There's too much car for a young driver. And Andy, from father to father here, you better check your insurance rates before you sign your son up for a sporty car, because that can be a deal breaker in and of itself. But
that's true.
Again, I'm glad nobody mentioned the WRX, and I'm just putting
for first car. That's
I mean, he didn't specifically say sporty. He specifically mentioned a manual.
Which doesn't always mean sporty.
I went and mentioned the Civic Si. That's my fault.
Right.
But just because it's Jake Fisher, one of his sons, I believe, has the Civic Si.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's proof that we're even saying here that's okay to do that if you can trust your son.
And as we talked about in our pre-production meeting, all three of us grew up driving manual transmissions. I know for me, I drove a manual before I drove an automatic.
That's all there was. I think.
That's what it was. It wasn't, but I mean, and I think we gave super producer Dave Abrams some pictures of the cars that we owned. Specifically for me, I had a Mazda RX-7, I had a Civic 87 Civic Si, and a few others. And so we're all for it. And learning to drive a manual is awesome. And one of the things that we haven't mentioned, it's also like an anti-theft device. right?
Nowadays.
Because hardly anyone
that's
can
a good
drive a manual, and so the likelihood of your car being stolen goes way down.
Fair point. I hadn't thought about that.
You know something? So anyway, love your questions. And just a reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, we recently added a donate button to our page. Consumer Reports is a nonprofit, so if you're able to help us keep doing this important work like talking cars, we always appreciate it. Every little bit helps. And that'll do it for this episode, which was masterfully orchestrated by super producer Dave Abrams and expertly edited by Andrew I Still Play Hockey Belize. Say that right. Belize. As I see, even in practice, I messed it up. And also, Anatoly, the great Shumsky, helps out all the time. As always, check the show notes for more information on the vehicles and topics that we discussed. And just a reminder, please keep your questions coming. Go to talkingcars@icloud.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We had a blast, and we'll see you next week.